Well, we're back. I'm Stephanie Abrams. If you just tuned in, this is jetset411. And I have to tell you, I've been watching the pictures that we've selected to share with you, and I am inspired to fly on the wings of E.T. and go flying off to some of these places. But one of the things we want to be sure to do when we're making an investment in travel, because it's more than just your dollars, it's also your dreams that you're investing in your trip. But it's painful if you have to change your plans for any reason, wind up not going or interrupting your trip in the middle because there's a reason why you have to go home now, either your reason or the reason of someone at home or in your company that requires you to leave. And in addition to losing the rest of your trip, you lose money associated with that trip. And that's just dreadful. And there are ways around that. And for that reason, we've invited Jim Grace, the president and CEO of InsureMyTrip.com, and Peter Evans, the Executive Vice President of InsureMyTrip.com, to talk with us a little bit about the kinds of unforeseen situations that required insurance, and those who had it could walk away feeling not so bad. It's never good to walk away from a trip, but it's so much better to walk away economically in good shape after that. So thank you for joining us, Peter Evans. It's great to have you with us as well, and welcome back into this segment, Jim Grace. Let's talk a little bit about unforeseen situations. Just in the last recent past, we have seen fires in California, fires in Florida, fires in Georgia, a city in Kansas that is now a flat canvas. Really a Freudian slip, but for sure the reality, a town that was absolutely flattened. Now I have to imagine that in such populated areas as California and Florida and southern Georgia and this entire town of Kansas, there had to be some people in there who had already paid the money to go on a cruise or a tour. Their summer vacations were around the corner, and this is not a time for any of those people to be thinking about anything except home and hearth that has to be put back together again. My experience has been that most companies that supply the travel, like tour operators and cruise lines, do not put in the any eventuality clause. It's only based on someone becoming deathly ill and having to supply medical proof from a doctor or a hospital, and then maybe they've got a case, even if they've bought insurance. But what about these really horrible situations where your home has become uninhabitable or has blown away or flooded out, as we've seen so much happen of late? What do you think about that, Jim?
Absolutely. Travel insurance does have protection for that type of event through two different vehicles. One is if your home should become uninhabitable, there is protection for that in the travel insurance policy. And then there's also something to think about called cancel for any reason coverage, which will cover should whatever the reason be for the cancellation, whether it be a tornado or, you don't feel well, you don't want to go, you're anxious.
You know, I like to call that bad hair day insurance because there are so many situations. The one that always comes to mind for me is where you've planned to go away with a friend or relative, and it's been planned for some time. Most people will buy a cruise, will buy it anywhere from 3 months to a year in advance. And you've planned to go away with these folks, and you've had a falling out. And you really don't want to see them, let alone be confined in a cabin or in a cabin next door or across the hall with them, because you're now in a very awkward situation. In the past, that has meant that's kind of too bad. You're going or you're losing your money. But you don't have to do that anymore, do you, Peter?
No, you don't. You do, as Jim said, cancel for any reason allows you up to 75% to get a refund of up to 75% of your actual trip costs. There are some additional costs from the premium side. It will cost you about 40% more than a regular trip insurance policy would cost. But that added protection will enable you to cancel for any reason. And for many people, that is a terrific benefit and a great peace of mind for them because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I've seen it in my own family where we planned something in advance and then something came up in business. And it wasn't the kind of thing you could say, well, plan it another time when I get back or before I leave. Right. This was the date. This is when you had to be there. And no one was taking an excuse other than you were no longer breathing on the planet.
Right.
If you were walking around, the expectation was you were going to be there. And then that would mean some serious loss in terms of not just disappointment, absolutely, but the funds, associated with it. I know that you see so many situations where people have been gleeful that they were clever enough to deal with being able to have the kind of insurance that would cover them. All insurance companies aren't the same, are they?
No, and all policies aren't the same either. So it's important to look at these things, look at where you're going, look at the risks you may be exposed to, and select a policy that exactly matches your needs.
That's such a good point, because I can remember policies where they would cover the cancellation of the trip, but if it was a ski trip, they didn't cover the results of what happened if you were injured skiing or whitewater rafting or some other kinds of active sports. They would cover the trip portion of it, but not the portion related to if you got hurt in association with that trip, which always seemed very strange to me, to have a ski trip policy that didn't cover what happened while you were skiing. Are there companies that will actually have the kinds of clauses to really protect you?
Absolutely. And there are some policies that have added benefits, what are called hazardous sports riders, which cover you skiing and also for some of those crazy adventures that people have been taking recently, hang gliding skiing and parasailing and all those crazy things that people do. There's coverage in these policies for that, but it's not in every policy, and you need to look at that and make sure you're buying the right policy. And getting professional advice on that is important as well.
I would think so, because the only thing more difficult than reading instructions on how to knit is instructions that come with the policy that you're buying. It's really written in it looks like English.
Right.
You really need an interpreter
right,
who can explain to you what you need based on where you're going and what activities you're going to be doing. And, it's not always the crazy adventure that causes the problem. I can remember a woman telling me not long ago that they went to a beautiful resort in Brazil where every morning they use soapy water to wash these marble paths, which made them ridiculously slippery, and she fell and injured her knee. And if it weren't for the kind of travel insurance she had, not only would they have lost the money for the rest of that portion of their trip, but when you have to interrupt your trip in the middle, you often incur extraneous charges to get home because the airline ticket that you have was bought at a special rate based on leaving on this day, coming back on that day. And once you changed that itinerary, you are now converting it into 2 one-way tickets, which is about double the cost of whatever you paid initially.
Right.
And so now you've got extra costs associated with getting home and losing the rest of the stay. If you were going to be there for 7 or 10 days and you were only there for 3, you've got a number of days of your stay and any excursions you might have been taking, any sightseeing or other activities you might have been doing, side cruises and that kind of thing. Do you have in the travel insurance industry the potential to be able to handle all those extra charges that are created from the interruption of a trip?
We do, Stephanie. And in the trip cancellation package policies, they have trip interruption, which is built in as part of the package. And what it enables you to do is when you have that situation where, let's just say there's been a death in the family, you have to come home, or a serious illness in the family in which you have to come home. Now you need to actually take your trip. They usually do a trip cost plus an additional amount because they know it's going to be more costly for you to actually make those last-minute changes. And these are built right into the trip cancellation package policies. And you also touched on 2 other elements that I think many people perhaps don't realize, or maybe they do, but these policies also provide medical protection as well as medical evacuation. So let's just take the case in point where your friend did slip on the soapy terrace and then injured themselves. Now these policies will extend to cover her medical benefits, as well as, let's just say there was a serious injury in that case, will also get them to the best care facility. And these components are worth their weight in gold. Of any of these policies.
Getting to the best care facility is a very important issue. When you are in the Brazilian jungle where it's gorgeous and wonderful and exciting, but you don't necessarily want to go to the local doctor to have whatever it is taken care of. We're going to take another quick break and take a look at some of the places in the world that might inspire you to travel. We'll be right back. This is Stephanie Abrams with Jet Set 411.